Dotto here. How the heck you doing this fine day? I am thrilled you are joining us, and welcome to Webinar Wednesday, which will begin in just a few moments. But before we begin, let me get a few administrative details out of the way so we don't have to clutter up the time during the actual webinar. First, this webinar is being recorded and it will be available in replay on both Facebook and on YouTube. We leave the replays available to you for 1 week after the webinar is broadcast, and then after that we take the webinars and we archive them for the purpose of our patrons. More on that in a few moments. Every week we host these free webinars. They on topics around productivity, content creation, and a little bit in online marketing. They're available to you free of charge. However, we are a community-funded channel and we appreciate your support. And you can show your support in 3 ways. The first way is what you're doing right now, just being here, commenting, sharing it with others, being a part of our community. We appreciate that. But in a more practical sense, you can also support us through the Super Chat, which is available to those of you viewing on YouTube. You can always give us a tip if you find something incredibly valuable in what we share. But our main way that we support the Dotto Tech channel and Webinar Wednesday in particular is through the generosity of our Patreon community. If you drop by patreon.com/DottoTech, you can support us financially on a monthly basis here, keeping Webinar Wednesday on the air. But there are perks. Oh, indeed, there are some fantastic perks. The most important of which is we archive each and every one of these tutorial webinars, and the entire catalog is available to our patrons. Now, sit back and relax. We appreciate you being here, one and all, and today's webinar is going to be something special starting in just a few moments. And with that, I want to welcome you one and all to Webinar Wednesday. Steve Dotto here. How the heck are you doing this fine day? I am some kind of thrilled that you are joining us. In just a second, I will bring April into the call. April is on family vacation. She is skiing in something like 16 inches of fresh snow. She's exhausted. She might fall asleep halfway through the webinar. I'm not positive. I know that if I had spent the morning skiing, I'd certainly be approaching nap time myself. But we are thrilled you are all here to join us today. This is going to be a very cool webinar. I have got increasingly excited about doing it as we have moved along, because as I dove more and more into the entire world of doing time audits, I just discovered more value that we could find on a whole bunch of different ways. So what started out to be something that I thought would be a nice to have, I'm recognizing we're in deeper waters than you might have anticipated. So let me just give you all a little bit of a heads up on exactly how it's all going to come together and what we're going to be doing today. For those of you who are joining us for the first time, Webinar Wednesday is a free tutorial that we offer each and every week, where we teach you some aspect of productivity, of content creation, or of online marketing. And we are made possible through the generosity of 2 particular groups. First of all, we have a sponsor for Webinar Wednesday, which is Restream.io. We're broadcasting this right now using Restream. It is a fantastic live streaming tool that acts as both a carrier, allowing us to take our live stream and broadcast it to multiple different social platforms. In our case today, we are on Facebook Live and on YouTube Live, but you can add other social platforms to that as well. It allows you to take the same stream, broadcast to all of those platforms. But there's also Restream Studio, which acts as a switching studio, which allows us to bring guests on, incorporate all of our different elements, manage the chat, and allows us to do the entire production of the broadcast. And so our thanks to the folks at Restream, and April will drop the link in the chats so that you can check them out. The other big supporter of Dotto Tech is our community at Patreon. This channel is community supported through the generosity of all of you through Patreon. Patreon, which is a crowdfunding site, similar to Kickstarter. where people can come and they can support the content that we create. And Webinar Wednesday is a big part of the content we create here at Dottotech. And our patrons, who give us $10 a month on average, they get access to several perks, the most important of which is the replay archive of all of these webinars. This is number 159 or 158 of our Webinar Wednesday series. We've done 158 of these tutorials, and now they're available for you for a week after we broadcast them to you all. But then once that week is up, they are archived and they are all available to our patrons. So a great big thank you and a shout out to all of you as well. Let's bring April in. April, I was giving you a chance to kind of settle in because you are in you're in a hotel room. Where exactly are you?
We are at Sunday River, Maine. So
okay.
So in Connecticut, actually, there was a huge snowstorm. We had this planned for a while, this trip, but what ended up happening was we had a huge snowstorm. We had a 16-inch drop of snow between what's today? Today is Wednesday, so Monday night into Tuesday. It was crazy. And honestly, I'm not a great skier. So yesterday, when I tell you exhausted me, like crazy, like unbelievable. I've skied my whole entire life. I have to say my father was great, but about getting us into skiing. And unfortunately he can't ski anymore. And I told him last night, he's like, I'm so jealous. I'm like, you know what, Dad, in all our life, we've never skied in snow like this, but because of your gift of skiing to us, like I've been able to give this to my kids. So my kids are in awe. They're in love. So
that is just awesome.
Yeah.
That is just awesome. Well, if you once we start the video playing, you can have a nap. You got about 22 minutes, 23 minutes.
No, I don't need a nap. No, they're skiing again tomorrow. So they had 3 foot. We ended up extending the hat into tomorrow, and we'll go home tomorrow night so they can ski some more. So we're good. I just had to quiet down the roosters behind me. I'm sorry, and I'm sorry about my lighting friends.
Well, you're not in your normal studio. You've set up your home office space pretty well right now, so you've probably missed that. All right, let's get things going. We've got a pretty good quorum of people in the room watching us on both Facebook and YouTube Live. So here's the structure. I pre-record all of the demos each week for this show. So I have done a overview of how to do a time audit. Going to be really looking forward to your feedback. Now, we've got a couple of bonuses included this week for the time audit, one of which is going to be available to you all, and one of which is we've kind of reserved for our patrons. So I'll be telling you about those during the video. The video is a little bit over 20 minutes long. While it's going on, April and I will be in chat answering your questions. We'll come back at the end and we will answer as many questions as we can through to the top of the hour. Don't worry about taking notes as we go, because I prepare really good notes now every week here on Webinar Wednesday. I prepare the entire webinar in Evernote, and then I share that Evernote note with you, which is kind of almost like an outline of my script, but it also includes all of the resources and all of the assets that I share. So if you've registered for this using as opposed to just coming to us through social, if you've registered for this, you will automatically get this email sent to you about a half an hour after this webinar is over. We just want to make sure that it's all in place, but we'll send it out about a half an hour afterwards. If you've not yet registered for this webinar, then April will drop the link. Make sure you register to give us your email address so that we can send you the resource notes, and they are worth the effort. I can promise you that. So this is it. All right, we're going to be jumping into the video. We're going to take a look at how you do a time audit and our different ways of approaching it, the reasons we should be doing it. I hope that you find this as valuable as I found doing all of the research on it. We'll see you on the other side of the video. Let us get right into this. I am looking forward to this content. Doing a time audit. When I first planned out this webinar, it seemed like a good idea, but the more that I drilled into the content, the more important it became. It became something that actually has grown beyond this single webinar. And this webinar now is the anchor webinar for 3 more webinars, a total of 4 webinars that are coming up over the next couple of weeks here on Webinar Wednesday. So I just wanted to let you know that, because we're looking at doing a time audit right now, and that time audit will give us a good idea of how we spend our time. In 2 weeks, we are going to do a follow-on webinar, which is taking on time and calendar blocking. So once we know how we spend our time, we can plan more efficiently, and using a technique like time and calendar blocking is what I think a great companion piece of content for this week's webinar. Because my goal here is, I know you, like me, are frustrated with the way the last year has gone. It's been a tough year on all of us. And 2021 isn't looking a lot easier if we want to be perfectly honest about things. So my goal is, if we can take the first quarter of 2021 and really develop some advanced productivity chops, if we can find something positive, if we can improve ourselves dramatically as far as how much we get accomplished in the first quarter, then we can look back on 2021 as getting kind of a good kickstart on things and let the rest of the stuff that's happening in the world sort itself out. We'll focus on what we can focus on, which is our own personal productivity. I hope you're on board with me. So the second in this webinar series, time and calendar blocking, that's going to be February 17th. Mark it on your calendar. Then we're going to do mastering the Pomodoro. I think that the Pomodoro technique goes hand in hand beautifully with calendar blocking. And it's a way that we can really get into the flow state and get a lot more work done in a lot less time. So we're going to look at mastering the Pomodoro, February 24th. And finish it all off with one of the best organizational tools that I know, is using the Kanban system. I'm calling it Don't Mess with the Kanban, but there are a variety of apps and a variety of tools that will allow us to use the Kanban methodology in order to be more organized. It's a system of organizing information and organizing projects. So this 4-part series, starting with doing a time audit, learning about calendar blocking, mastering the Pomodoro, and then exploring how you can use the Kanban in your own work. I think that's going to give you that kickstart that we were talking about to help you with productivity for the coming year. So today we're going to cover, why do we need a time audit? What's the purpose of it? Exactly what should we get out of it? What are the goals? Like what do we want to accomplish if we spend this time in introspection, figuring out how we spend our time? And what different ways do we have to measure? Are there different techniques we can use for doing a time audit? There's a couple of different ways, and we'll talk about those. And then, what do we do with the results? How do we take the data that we collect, and once we understand how we spend our time, and how do we interpret that so that we can improve how we spend that time? Time is our most valuable asset, yet we tend to waste it, kill it, and spend it rather than invest it. Well, let's invest a little bit of time right now and see if we can't increase the value of the time we have. And just like money, you often wonder where the time goes. How often do you spend a day working away at the desk, and then you realize the end of the day is on right now, and you've gotten very little accomplished, or you feel that you've gotten very little accomplished? It can be very self-defeating. It's a negative emotion, and you sit there at home at dinner later on with your spouse and you say, I have no idea where today went. I don't think I got anything accomplished. You work hard all day and you're exhausted at the end of the day. We have to learn to recognize where we spend time valuably, where we actually move the ball downfield, and what is basically time wasting, where we're flitting from task to task and never get anything accomplished. So that's what makes a time audit a good idea, is giving us a clear idea of where the day goes, of where we spend our time. Because we can't make more time. We know that. We cannot manufacture more time. But if we can measure the time we have, then we can make informed decisions about spending that time more effectively. So there's 2 kind of goals here. One is we want to increase our productivity, but we also want to decrease our low value time that we're spending. If there are things that we do that somebody else can do and costs us less money, and we can concentrate ourselves on higher value activities, we want those results as well. I don't just want to make you more efficient and make it so that you can get more done. I want you doing the right things and concentrating on doing things that are most profitable, most valuable to you. And that is an integral part of doing a time audit, at least the way that we are doing one today. I believe that our perceptions on where we spend time are often distorted, and I think you will probably be surprised, sometimes pleasantly, sometimes not so pleasantly surprised, when you do your time audit, when you see how much time you spend on different tasks and activities, and how much some of those activities actually cost you when you do the final accounting. So our goals today, right now, as far as not our goals today, our goals in doing the time audit is, first, find wasted time. to find time that is wasted and make sure we do not waste it. Identify opportunities for outsourcing, for taking what we do and having somebody else do it more effectively for us. Not always more efficiently as far as the time. It might take somebody a little bit longer to do something than it takes you, but they can do so at a lower rack rate. They cost less for you to have them do it than yourself. And maybe it just reduces the amount of stress on you. There's a lot of reasons we want to move stuff off our plate. Let's identify the things that we can and should be moving off our plate. And we want to build more efficiency into our day. We just want to get more accomplished for our business, for our own personal productivity. So there's two ways to start doing a time audit. And you know what, basically a time audit is going to be, we're going to mark down, we're going to record somehow how we spend our day, and then we're going to evaluate it. So there's two different ways. Now, I've got a couple of blog posts and a couple of documents that I'm going to be sharing with you. It's here in the Evernote note, which we will share with you after today's webinar. Several different people recommend that you start a time audit by writing down your intention of what you want to, what you want to accomplish, of kind of a task list, a to-do list of what you would like to get done, and then measure how you do against that. I recommend that you actually start with research, and I will explain why in just a moment, by basically just monitoring your day as you go along. Starting with intention. Their recommendation. They want you to write down your goals, what's important, what you want to get done, and how you really want to spend your day. They think that's a great way to start things out. And then you can start to mark down, and as you go through the day, you have a timer of some sort, and you have your intentions written down on a piece of paper, and you write down what you've accomplished. It's kind of like a to-do list, I think, just, checking off a to-do list. But I don't like that idea. I prefer that you leave everything and you don't change anything about what you do. You just find a way to measure everything that you do all day long, and you let nature take its course. You basically forget that you're doing a time audit, but measure it all, spy on yourself, and then come back and look at how you spend time in the real world. You see, I think that if you write down your best intentions, if you think about what you're doing as far as a time audit goes, then it's going to be kind of like when the doctor tells you you have a blood test on Tuesday. What happens on Saturday? On Saturday, you stop drinking beer. And you don't have nachos on Sunday for dinner like you might have done had you not have to have a blood test on Tuesday. So you clean up your act so your blood test comes out aces. Do we do this? And think about it for a minute. It's just ridiculous. Because it gives you an artificial information about what state your blood is really in. Instead, if you actually drank the beer on Saturday and you ate the nachos on Sunday, and who knows what you did on Monday, so when you actually get the blood, it's a quagmire of badness that your doctor says, you got to cut these things out. But if he doesn't see any of it in there, he says you're fine, and you go right back on Wednesday or Thursday to drinking your beer and eating your nachos. I think that's how it works with productivity too. When we can, for short bursts of time, be incredibly effective and incredibly productive. But it's far better to measure what we're like as we normally go through our days, which is why I like the automated system for recording your time better, because we tend to forget it's in the background, and we go back and we take a look at it later on. But having said that, start with the research. Just start, and then once we're done, have a look at the data. That's what I recommend. And there's an easy way and a hard way to do this. The hard way is the manual method. It's basically writing down each step as you go along. Now, we have a download for you that can help. If you don't want to use technology, if you want to work based off paper or based off of a spreadsheet, we built this little time tracker for you, which is just a little spreadsheet module that Liz built for us that allows you to basically choose all of the time that you spend in the day, mark it down, and you've got to have a timer of some sort, and you're going to have to remember through the day to categorize it. And we set up some categories for you. Now, you can modify this, but we set up these categories for time that's very productive, just plain productive, distracting, very distracting, and more on these categories in a moment of how you categorize the information. But this is available. The link will be in the Evernote document that we send to you. This is just a Google Sheet. Just copy it, duplicate it, and then start to monitor your own activities and write them down as you go along. I guess you don't have to write them down. You can type them down as you go along. Now, what this is showing here is actually very similar to the technology that I like to use for this purpose, and that is Easy Street. There's a tool called Rescue Time, which I have installed and I've used for years on my computer, which basically audits everything that I do and creates a report for me. Now, some people have issues with it relating to privacy, which we will talk about in a moment. We will talk about the privacy issues. But before we talk about the privacy issues, let me show you how it works. And I haven't prepared for this in really any way, but we're going to jump over here into my browser and I am going to launch Rescue Time, which is constantly running. It's a system-based tool, so it installs in Macintosh or Windows, and it tracks your activity all day long in the background and creates a daily dashboard report like this. So what time is it now? It's 3 o'clock in the afternoon. I've had a fairly busy day in the office before I sat down and started to record this demo. This is my day as in its unvarnished form. You can see here all of the different tools that I've used today. I used Evernote quite a bit, Zoom, I used Google Docs, Gmail, Google Spreadsheet, and Facebook. And it tells me out of the nearly 5 hours or a little bit over 5 hours that I spent working today, 44 minutes has been distracted time, what it classifies as distracted time. And I imagine this is probably going to be relating to my time in Facebook here. And 4 hours and 43 minutes is productive time. So overall, I have a 77% productive rate. So this is it just tracking the sites and the tools that you're using and giving you feedback. And it's incredibly valuable, especially when you look at historical data that's shared this way. Now you can modify what's considered to be distracting and productive. And this relates back to that spreadsheet that I showed you earlier. If we go here into the settings and we go into categorize activities, here are all of the tools that it's ever tracked me using. And you can see next to each one, there is a value, which are the same values that we put into that spreadsheet for you. So you can go through and you can say Zoom is productive time. You can edit it by clicking here and you can change it from productive to distracting to neutral to very productive. I consider most of my time in Zoom to be productive because I'm meeting with team members, etc. So I put that down as productive, not very productive. Very productive is like time that I spend in Evernote because I'm organizing information. Very productive is time that I spend in Hindenburg, which is what I use for recording my podcasts. Those are very productive, very specialized times. So I assign those values. So the average person might have YouTube as distracting because you go to YouTube to distract yourself. If you're a YouTube publisher, your time spent in YouTube is actually very productive. So you can change the settings so you can see what is productive and not productive. And so it gives you a customized report based on your settings that's incredibly accurate. Now, you can view this as a day, and that's fairly valuable, but you can also view the data as weeks or months. So if I want to see what I've done for the entire month of January, last month, this is my total time. Now, I am personally trying to do some things like work less in the evening. So I'm trying to just concentrate on being here in my office during working hours because I have an office at home and not working during evening time and spending more time with family and inserting a little more work-life balance. That's one of the goals that I have set for myself. So let's see. For the month of January, I was 78% productive. I hope I'm not going to find anything here that's off base. So 78% productive. And you can see that I spent a lot of time in YouTube, in Google Documents, and in ScreenFlow. ScreenFlow is where we edit all of our videos. I spent quite a bit of time in Zoom, Gmail, and Slack for communications. I also spent quite a bit of time in Asana, which is organizational, in Amazon.ca. Now, Amazon, because I'm an Amazon affiliate, could be considered productive time, but it might have been just me shopping for things as well. So that might not be quite as productive. And Facebook is the only social networking site I spent significant time in, and then using different utilities as well. So we can see that I spent 53 hours outside of work hours. I didn't do too well meeting my goals in January, and 115 hours during work hours. And you can see where I spent and what I worked on. So I can take this information now and I can say, you know what, if I could offload and I could get somebody else doing Gmail, helping to manage my email, maybe I can reduce the amount of time that I spend in email, and I can instead, I could spend more time creating podcasts or creating videos for YouTube or trainings. This is where I have Not fantasy, not what I would like to be spending my time, but real accurate representation of where and how I spend my time. This is a free utility called Rescue Time. Now we have a link in the shared Evernote note here. Now I do have an affiliate link for it because it's free with about 3 months of back reports for you, and in some other limitations. The paid version will allow you to do things like focus, allow you to block distracting sites when you want to focus. It sets up timers for you, and it does some of the things that we're going to be talking about next week, or in 2 weeks, as far as setting up a Pomodoro type techniques for yourself. But it's available for free. Now, I can hear you already shouting, Steve, wait a minute, Steve. So having somebody monitor what I do on a daily basis, it's fine if I have the information, but I don't want anybody else having access to that information. And indeed, Rescue Time is not just set up for individuals, but it could also be used in an enterprise. And I know a lot of employees, especially distance employees, don't necessarily want their boss looking at what they do each day and how they're doing it. There are obviously some concerns. So I will encourage you to take a look in the Evernote note and go through, if you are interested in using Rescue Time, going through and reading through their privacy FAQs here. And the most important thing that you'll probably want to read is how they protect the data, which is how much encryption they provide, and also exactly what information they're capturing. The bottom line is they don't capture detailed specifics of which web page you are at. Instead, they look at which website you are at. So if you're in Facebook, whoever is looking at the data doesn't know which profile you're on or which posts you're commenting on. They just know you were in Facebook. So you could be doing Facebook ads, or you could be browsing through social posts within Facebook. So it does it at that level. You have to make sure that it's something you're comfortable with. If you are comfortable with it, it has been an invaluable tool for me to basically understand where I lose time and where I spend time. So that brings us to the next part of our conversation, is what comes next. Once you've measured your data, you've filled out the spreadsheet that we've given you that allows you to have a couple of weeks worth of data of how you spend your time, or you've installed a tool like Rescue Time, and now you know how you have a report on how you spent your time. How do we then take that and start to work with that information? And one thing you might consider doing is setting up an Eisenhower Matrix of some sort. Now, the Eisenhower Matrix is a very simple way to analyze data. There's 4 quadrants, and the quadrants could be broadly defined as super valuable, kind of valuable, not so valuable, and not valuable. That might be one way of defining it. For us, I set up two different kind of labeling systems that you might consider to put in place. And for each of us, there's going to be a different value system. But you could say that in the very important quadrant, you have important and urgent. So important is something that has to be done, and urgency I define as something that has to be done now. It's time sensitive, because we balance that constantly of time sensitive work that we have to do versus work that's really important in meeting our long-term goals and objectives. So if it's both has to be done quickly and it meets our long-term goals and objectives, it's urgent and important. Another way to define that same critical quadrant is perhaps it's only something that you can do. It's high value, something that really helps move the ball downfield, but it's something that only you can do. So just pick one of these metaphors as you're filling out your Eisenhower Matrix, as you move what you do, as you move the results into it. The next one, which is the mostly important one, is something that's important, but it's not urgent. So it's not time sensitive, but it should be done. It has high value, but others could do, would be another way of looking at it. So in the first example of stuff that's urgent and important, that's recording videos. It has to be done on a timely basis, but only I can do it because I'm the face of the channel. Editing the video, however, that's something that somebody else could do. It's equally as important as the recording, but it's a skill that we could pass off to somebody else. So as I looked to get stuff off of my plate, one of the first things that I did was found a way for Liz to be able to edit the videos, our main YouTube videos, and that reduced the amount of time on me. So you see how we're now starting to identify opportunities for more efficiency so that we spend more time on high value activities. Then we have urgent but not important. So it's time sensitive, but it really doesn't help us out all that much. So that might like be something which would be great to do, like be a guest on somebody else's podcast. It's very time sensitive, but does it really help us out as much as if I was to say spend that time on a more urgent task, on something like recording my own podcast? So that's where we should make the decisions on where best to spend our time. And then stuff that's important but not really urgent. Well, sorry, not really important and not really urgent, but nice to have, the nice to have category. So that might be going through Dropbox and organizing all of your data. It's really not going to make much difference today or tomorrow. It'll save you time downstream, and it's definitely something that somebody else could probably do. Nice to have, but not urgent. So I want you to kind of define an Eisenhower matrix once we're through the process of measuring all of your data. Now, we do have a special bonus, and this is just for our patrons. We love our patrons so much that Liz went through and she built a very special, calculator for you. For if you are considering supporting us on Patreon, we will share this link here, and if you become a patron, this document will be shared with you in our Patreon community. Now, what it is it's an Eisenhower matrix that we created that allows you to basically go through all of your activities, put them in, and not just measure the time, but attach a dollar value to it as well. So you can determine where you're leaking money and how you can make your enterprise more profitable. So for example, hosting a podcast, and I just put down for my own hourly rate, I had trouble figuring out. I said maybe $120 an hour. Maybe that's what I'm worth. I'm probably worth more. And if not, I definitely deserve a raise. But it is in that Eisenhower matrix, it's important and urgent. It's something that only I can do, and it has to be done on time. And if I spend 3 hours a week or so doing that at $120 an hour, it's worth about $420 a week for me to do. But that is something that nobody else can do. So we know that that's what it costs. But look at Zoom meetings. If I just spend an hour a day in Zoom meetings, which I think we know that I do based on the criteria as we went through the rescue time, if we extend that out, I'm spending $600 a week of my time in Zoom calls. We could make our Zoom calls slightly more effective, could we not? And maybe reduce that by an hour, save a little bit of time. Respect time. Remember, it's something that we don't respect. We sometimes spend it easily. Let's not spend it as easily when we start to recognize the dollar value of it. As we go through seeing uploading and editing podcasts, if I spend a half an hour doing that per week, just uploading it, not editing, but just uploading the podcast and posting it, it's still like worth $60. Could that be then $60 that I take and I spend on an executive assistant that can do that as one of their tasks? And we can go through and we can add up the dollar value of the tasks that we can move to somebody else, that we can offload, and that will give us the justification we need in order to hire somebody and bring somebody on and move stuff off of the plate of the people who the work and allow us to concentrate in that upper left-hand quadrant, the urgent and important work. So this spreadsheet. You can create your own if you want, but if you are one of our patrons, it will be in the module. It will be in the replay module of this particular webinar for you, and we appreciate it. And Liz did that as a special gift for our patrons. Woohoo! Thank you so much, Liz. Now, regardless if you use one of our forums or you develop your own Eisenhower matrix to figure out the results of your time audit yourself, the outcomes are going to be you're going to start to recognize your low benefit activities, the things that you should not be doing. And hopefully you're going to also discover your systematizable work. I don't know if that's an actual word or if I spelled it right, if it's not, but work that you can pass off to others. That's one of the things that I really rely on doing time audits to find. Things that we can put on to another team member or bring a new team member on to do. You'll start to recognize your highly creative and highly specialized work, your high value, and the work you do, which is high profit, the things that you focus on, which really help your company. You hopefully, as a result of the time audit, that will become more clear. And I think you're going to kind of see a couple of different main categories probably emerge as a result of doing a proper time audit. You're going to recognize activities that maybe you pop into and out of multiple times a day that maybe you could consolidate into one time. And this is where the time blocking that we're going to be looking at comes in. You know, if you're in and out of email several times a day and you realize that you're spending a total of maybe an hour and a half in Gmail or in email in a day, I wonder if you then say, you know what I'm going to do is I'm going to block off 45 minutes a day. I'm going to do email in that 45 minutes, and I'm going to discipline myself not to go into email anytime other than that. I'm willing to bet dollars to donuts that you'll get all of the email covered in that 45 minutes that you're now spending an hour getting into, catching up on, getting up to speed, and then popping out of. So disciplining yourself to focus on one activity at a time, it will help you identify that. And identify your high priority activities that take up substantial portions of your time, as well as finding things that you should stop doing or do less. I hope that you will also get out of this a validation of the things that you should be doing more of, and recognizing that, and maybe making a commitment to do more of the really good things that really help your company. Not just getting rid of the things that are kind of anchors, but let's also find the things that fill you with, that fill your wings and lift your company up and really get you going. That's what I hope that you get from doing an effective time audit. So let's get into the Q&A. I know there are going to be lots. There we go. I am back, and let's see if April is. Is she live? Are you there, April?
Yes.
Okay. April has been battling the technical gremlins, hotel Wi-Fi, as you can imagine, as we've been going along. So I imagine you're a little bit panicky.
Oh, you think? No. Well, yes, a little bit. You know what? I actually wanted to. As we were going through this, it was interesting because Tim Ferriss and the 4-Day Work Week. Have you ever read that book?
Yep, absolutely.
Yeah. So what are your
4-hour work week?
4-hour work week. Sorry. What are your thoughts on that?
Well, I think it's a little bit dated, but he's still on point as far as how productivity goes. The bottom line, if you're concentrating on the purpose of a time audit is to help us understand where we lose time, where we spend time, and in anybody who has the discipline to concentrate and hyper focus on core activities that really benefit your business, or and even for a short period of time, can make a massive difference in the productivity in moving, as I always say, moving the ball downfield.
Sure.
So the bottom line is, though, I think with the pandemic, I think one of the reasons I got so excited about doing this, and I kind of vested a little bit more in this particular webinar, is I think that the pandemic has affected our distracted nature, and that we need to really, and we're busy all day long. We feel like we're working, but we're like running in sand. We don't really have traction. And as I looked at the different mechanisms that the time audit gives us, I think it might help center us, help bring us kind of back to neutral, so that we can move ahead. It's been the effects of the pressures of the outside world and the just how it's affected us personally and socially and business wise go way deeper than I think that we probably pay attention to right now. I think that we've kind of worked our way through things, bulled our way through things, and we haven't, and we still got the piper to pay as we come through the pandemic.
I would agree.
So this gives us this allows us to be proactive instead of reactive, right? So that's the goal.
No, and I would agree. I think the hardest thing is email. Well, as you know, and most of you know in the Dottotech crowd, is email is one of my biggest things. And I think one of the things when people talk about checking their emails at certain times of the day to be more productive, I feel like that is such a discipline. I don't know. It's one of those hangups that's hard to let go of.
Well, what this will tell you is how much time you spend in email during the day. And if you take this, if you kind of just take this now and kind of understand and start thinking about it, here's my goal for as many of you who are going to kind of follow this journey with us, is start your time audit right now. Either install Rescue Time or download one of the tools that we're offering, that we're going to be sending out to you, and start your time audit right now, but then park it. Next week, we're talking about something totally different. Next week, we're going to be talking about Reddit of all things. So we're not going to be, we're just kind of putting everything in the back burner. And now let's just measure for a little bit of time. Let's just measure. And then in 2 weeks, when we come back, that's when we're doing our time blocking webinar. We're going to be talking about time and calendar blocking. And so just to bring it kind of full circle to the email question is, I believe that this sort of thing can happen. I think I mentioned it in the webinar. Farley is getting all excited here. I think I mentioned it in the webinar is if you, when you do your calendar blocking and your time blocking, if you say, take and assign and stay with a discipline of, I'm going to spend 45 minutes a day on email, no more, no less. And I'm going to do it at a certain time by blocking out that time. And I'm going to honor and respect my commitment. I bet dollars to donuts that you will get through more email more effectively with clearer communication than you currently do with your habit of responding to email ad hoc as you pop in and out of email through the day. Because every time you go into it, you have to get up to speed. And you also, when you go into it, when you go into email and you just open your email and you don't have a plan, it's open-ended. You can leave at any time and there's no cost. You aren't committed to the process of getting through 45 minutes. So you kind of steal your soul for 45 minutes of email. I'm going to do it. And you get down and you focus and you do it and you get into the zone and you concentrate and you blast through it. And you know what? If there's still emails waiting after 45 minutes, you did your job. And you can close off the email and you can know you did what your commitment was. And over time, that will make you far more efficient. And perhaps email will not become the cross that we're bearing. Instead, email will just become another task that you maybe have a little bit more positive attitude towards. That's my hope. That's my hope. And I think not everybody's going to get there, but we have to take steps in that direction.
No, I think you've dropped some great tidbits there on email. Yeah, absolutely.
Let's take care of some business, and because I know that I confused a few people. I kept talking about the Evernote note that we're sharing, and you see the note that I work from on screen. So for all of you who are worried about how that's going to be shared, etc., Evernote has the ability for us to create a dynamic link, or a link which allows us to share the note. It's just a web URL. It converts the Evernote note into a web page. If you happen to use Evernote, when you click on the link, it will launch it in Evernote, and you can save the Evernote note as a note in your copy of Evernote. But if you don't have Evernote, if you use OneNote or any other tool, it doesn't matter. It will open in a browser. Now, it won't have the playable video. It'll be a link to the YouTube video, but everything else is going to look the same. All of the links are going to be there. All of the descriptions, even the cute little Steve emoji graphics are all going to be there. So you'll be able to share it. It's just basically a web page that is shared at that point there. But we send that out. So I compose the entire note as I'm preparing the main content for the lesson. And then we are now sharing that with you. And it's kind of one of the other benefits of supporting us here. It's not just for patrons, it's everybody that comes out to support us. I mean, by taking part in Webinar Wednesday. So that will be sent to you after the webinar. And we don't want to send all of the links out ad hoc because it just gets too confusing for us right now. So the downloadable note for our patrons, there'll be the link for that. The free Google Sheet, which you can use to start building your own time tracking system, that is also included, as well as links to the research articles that I used as I was doing all of the background information on it, and one video that we have on Rescue Time, as well as links for us on using for Rescue Time, which, as I mentioned, is an affiliate link. But I obviously make nothing if you stay with the free version. A small number of people upgrade. A lot of people had questions about whether or not Rescue Time will track their activities across multiple platforms. Multiple computers, yes, not multiple devices. So it doesn't, at this point, as far as I know, there's no version of it that works in your smartphone. But if you have a notebook computer and a desktop computer, it will track in the same account and it won't duplicate time, but it will give you a complete digest of how you spent your time on both of those devices combined in your dashboard. Now, before we go on, one more mention that our show today is brought to you through our sponsor, which is Restream Studio. We're using the technology. Now, we did for how many years? 5 years we've been on the air. We've never taken on a sponsor.
You sent the video last week of our very first.
Yeah, January of 2017 was our first time we did Webinar Wednesday. We've never had a sponsor until we found the perfect fit, and that was Restreams.io, because it's the technology we use that kind of makes it tick. Last year, we converted from delivering Webinar Wednesday in a webinar platform to doing it live stream on YouTube and Facebook Live. And for that, we needed a reliable technology partner that we could deliver to multiple platforms at the same time and give us the ability to produce the show. And Restream stepped in. They have the tools and technology for us to stream to multiple platforms, and they have Restream Studio, which allows us to compose and allows me to pull all of the different assets together, manage the chat, bring up the comments, incorporate guests like April and when we have other guests, and blend in all of the pre-recorded video. So it really works for us. Plus, it records everything and gives us some really great detailed analytics off the back end after the webinar is done. So if you are interested in engaging in the world of live streaming, you can't look farther than Restream Studio as far as the technology partner that will get you there. It's serving us. I can guarantee it will serve you. So April will drop the link for Restream. And one more shout out. We've mentioned our patrons a lot, so I'm not going to spend too much time on it, but we have to thank our patrons for the support. We are community funded, and your support is what keeps us on the air more than anything else. And there are perks to being a patron of Dottotech, including all of the replays and also the Eisenhower Matrix designed time tracking module that Liz worked so hard to design, which I think she did a kick-ass job on. So for our patrons, just so you know, when Webinar Wednesday, when we upload this into Webinar Wednesday archives, the link to the document, to the new spreadsheet will be there. It'll be in Thinkific. It'll be part of the module with this replay, so it'll be available to everyone. And we'll post a note in Patreon so you know exactly where to look as well. So let's get to the questions. I think I answered a few of the questions, but not all of them.
Okay. You definitely did, but there is a few. So Diane was asking, can you track on multiple devices with Rescue Team?
So I just mentioned that you can over multiple computers, but even different operating systems. If you have a Mac and a Windows PC, your account will track both of those, but not into your iPad or other devices. Several people also asked, what about offline time? What about things like piano lessons or other things if we were doing those? That's why you have to kind of use a combined method. If you have to use the tracking software, then you have to take that information into a spreadsheet of some sort, and then you have to organize it, and then you would have to write in time that you spend in piano lessons, or if you want to track your time down to that level.
So Bob was asking, is this Excel or Google Docs, your example? It looked to me like it was Google Docs, but
these are all of our spreadsheets are Google Docs, but of course you can import them into Excel if you desire.
All right. What happens with the app if you leave your Chrome tab open? Say, for example, you leave your email open. And there was a lot of talk in the chat, just so you know, to kind of follow up on that. There was a lot of people talking about having multiple tabs open for rescue time. Like, how does that work?
It looks for activity in the window. So if you've just left your tab open and you go away, it's not going to track the time. It's not going to track the activity. The one exception might be a YouTube video playing. If you have a video playing and you go away and you leave it playing, it thinks that there's activity, so it would then probably track that time. But if you're just like the screensaver, if there's a timeout, and if it's not logging keystrokes, but it's looking for activity.
Okay. Let's see. And can you synchronize Time Audit on multiple devices?
Yeah, we've covered that.
Okay. Let's see. Has anyone tried or uses Timular? Have you used Timular device?
No, but last week we talked about it on App Wednesday. It was one of the tools that Mike Vardy talked about. So Timular, I think it's a Timular. It's a dice, an 8-sided dice that you flip around, and it's a very different process. It's not giving you a time audit, but instead it's a focus tool. So what happens is you flip it to a certain, flip up, say, email, and while it's flipped up, it's tracking your time, but you're working on email. So it's designed to help you focus from a perspective of giving you kind of a talisman to let you know that this is what you're supposed to be working on at this particular time, based on what side is up on the dice. So it's a tool that would work really nicely in conjunction with Pomodoro or calendar blocking, but it's not really doing the time audit that we're talking about, but rather it's a next stage device that I would look at.
All right, and I'm not sure that you answered this already. If you're on a call, can rescue time tell if you're on a call or step away for a coffee lunch break?
I don't think so. No, it's not that granular. Yeah.
All right. With rescue time, can you look out?
I should point out, it's not really a billing app. There's a difference between a tool like Rescue Time, which is auditing your thing, and it's got a premium version which will do things like block Facebook so that you can stay on task more. Billing apps, billing timers are when you start a timer and you're going to be billing somebody maybe by the minute, say you're a lawyer or something like that. That's a different sort of tool. Rescue Time is not that. It's an auditing tool as opposed to a billing and an active tool like that.
All right. Can you lock out certain sites until certain times of the day, such as Facebook, and only after 9 p.m., that kind of thing?
I think so. I'm not positive on the granular nature of how it will block different sites, etc. But it's fairly customizable. I mean, you could see how I could go in and I could take something that like YouTube, which would be considered highly distractive, and turn it into productive time. So it's quite customizable. You'd have to dive in. And it's, as I say, it's a free download, so you can figure a lot of those things out pretty quickly.
All right. What's your opinion of GTD method? Do you have one?
I love it. Getting things done. It's the book called Getting Things Done. It's David Allen's kind of Bible on productivity, and it really works on first in. The heart of that system is we've incorporated into, say, our 3 steps to inbox zero, which is how we teach people how to overcome email overload. But the heart of the GTD, or the Getting Things Done system, is as often as possible you touch something once. That when you get something on your desk, when you open an email, when you do anything, that you deal with it to completion before you move on, so we don't end up with lots of open loops and lots of things that we're constantly returning to. So I love the concept of GTD, and I think it's really kind of almost like it's the main religion that so many of us kind of work from as far as our basic productivity systems. Everyone is a derision of it. It's like the original kind of. It's like, I don't know, in the Catholic Church you have the Holy Trinity, but God is at the center. It's the God of the productivity Holy Trinity.
All right.
That was a bad analogy. I apologize.
It's all good. It's all good. Diana was asking, how does Rescue Time differ from Apple's built-in screen time tracking?
Well, it's similar. It's similar. Apple. We all get Sunday afternoon now. Apple tells us what we've spent our screen time on. Something that
it's a terrible thing, actually.
Yeah. It's, you don't like seeing it, do you? But it's very similar. It's very similar, and you can use it in conjunction. Yeah.
My 13-year-old tells me that I'm on my phone more than he is, which is crock of crap. But just saying.
you can offer proof. Let's compare.
All right. You know what? There's actually a lot of comments and not so many questions today. Like, you answered questions, and people actually, the wonderful thing about Tech community is people answer everyone's questions as well. So I'm just going back here through.
Lynn is asking here, will the Evernote note automatically come to Patreon supporters? We will drop you a note in Patreon of where to look, but it will be in the Webinar Wednesday archives as a part of this lesson, in the text of this video. So it'll be available to you there.
All right. Let's see. I'm interested in that.
I wanted to get the music. I wanted to get the Time Warp. Let's do the Time Warp from Rocky Horror Picture Show. And I hope everybody caught that. Let's kind of that energy. That song has been playing in the back of my head the whole time. So I want you to think, let's do the Time Warp as you go. Let's do a Time Audit.
Are you going to play it right now?
No, I'm not. No, no. But there's lots of movie relation in this whole series, because our Kanban, Don't Mess with the Kanban, that's a takeoff on that terrible Adam Sandler movie, Don't Mess with the Zohan. I don't know if everybody caught that, but that was where I was going with this whole thing. Trying to add a little bit of fun to your life, to your productivity life as well. Sing it, dude. No, I'm not singing today.
Do you want to just clarify one more time? Mary Jo earlier had asked, so what if we do not have Evernote? I use OneNote with my 365. Can they still access the note for the replay?
Yeah, it's just going to open in your browser. It's just going to open as a web link in your browser. Yeah. So if you have Evernote, you'll get the option to open it in Evernote. If you don't have Evernote installed in your system, it just opens as a browser page.
All right. Everybody wants you to sing it, dude. Like,
no, but You know what? Everybody's going to be disappointed.
No,
Get used to it. I'm not
saying not be disappointed. I've seen Steve on stage, like at Social Media Marketing World, and he's amazing. And I've seen clips, so don't ever let him say that. You should sing for us once in a while, by the way.
Yeah, well, I'll pick a different song to sing.
Everybody's agreeing. Like, you should get on the bandwagon here.
We'll find something where it's properly done on stage, and we'll share a video of me on stage at some point.
Do you have an opinion on the inbuilt Microsoft Analytics, which tracks your activity?
No, I just kind of started to look at that. So Microsoft is stepping into the space. Definitely, I haven't looked at it. Would love other people's opinions on it, but I haven't any thoughts on it.
All right. See, people love you. They want you to get up and sing. You don't need to be on the stage. Go for it, Steve.
Shush.
I think that's really it for questions. Like, I think you did a great job with, a lot of the stuff is going to be in the Evernote when we send out the replay. I've dropped the replay link in there for people that have not signed up already for it.
Yeah.
It's going through.
Bob Bernard, Steve is not bashful. Steve just knows that he wants to keep his audience intact. I don't want to drive people away at this point.
Can you use Evernote with OneNote though? Like,
no,
you can't.
So
there's no crossover, Mary Jo. You would just click on the link and you'd have access to the replay notes. Yeah. We have a friend asking, can you set the app to different Google accounts as top productivity and log productivity?
No, it's just it's not gonna pay attention to which Google account you're in. It's gonna be taking a look at what browser pages you're on. Yeah.
Okay. Sing for the gray wave, maybe.
Maybe we'll do something inside the gray wave. Yeah, we might do that.
All right, for OneNote, I think you can export. So Mary Jo, John is just mentioning for OneNote, I think you can export the web page to OneNote from Evernote, is what he's saying.
Yeah, you'll be able to do that. Yeah, it'll be very evident when you get the email. You'll click on the link and it will just open. You'll have access to it. It's nothing to really worry about. It's a very straightforward process. The computer takes care of it all for us.
I think that is a wrap, my friend.
Yeah, it would go viral. It would, yeah.
Yes, it would go viral, and I agree with all of you. I feel like if one is a little bit creative, one can search on YouTube and can find plenty of videos of Steve Dotto singing in a variety of different productions over there. And he loves it. As you know,
I love doing shows. I miss doing shows.
He's very animated, and he is wonderful and has a great voice. So I highly encourage you to search that up.
Landon's asking if I'm ever going to do anything on OneNote. Not planning on it, Landon, because I worked on it earlier on when we did a comparison with Evernote, but I haven't looked at it since really. So I don't have the depth of knowledge that's required to do something effectively on OneNote. Oh, I should let you guys know, next week, and you're going to think that I'm jumping on the bandwagon, but I'm not jumping on the bandwagon. Next week, we're going to be doing the beginner's guide to Reddit. I had planned this last year in December. I planned to do this as I started to lay out the first quarter of the year. What's happened with all of the Wall Street bets and all of the drama that's been going on, actually, I kind of looked at it kind of wondering, everybody's going to think that I'm doing this just because Reddit is in the news. But I'd actually planned on doing this on Reddit long before. This just adds spice. And yes, we will talk a little bit about the social impact. I'm actually re-recording my podcast. I have my podcast ready to go, which drops tonight. But I'm spending quite a bit of time adding some additional content to it because I believe that what's happened in the social platforms with the entire Robinhood and Wall Street bets and the run up and run down of the GameStop stock is a real harbinger that we have to pay attention to in the social media marketing space. So those of you who subscribe to Gray Matters, our podcast, it's not finished. Normally it's put to bed and it's all ready to go by this point, but I'm actually re-recording a big part of it right now as soon as we're done here because I believe that's such an important story. for social platforms, and it's just the latest in a series of issues, going back to the storming of the Capitol and what's gone on with QAnon, and now this is where the social platforms are affecting us in ways that are increasingly out of control, and something that we should be paying attention to. But we will be we will touch on that next week. But the preponderance of next week's Webinar Wednesday is going to be just an overview of what Reddit is. I'll be curious how many of you are using Reddit. It's something that I haven't used a lot, but we're going to kind of go through the structure, and I think some things that make it really a fascinating platform to work with. And so that's going to be next week. Something a little bit out of left field, giving you time to do your time audit, so that when we come back in 2 weeks, we can start with calendar blocking and time blocking. All right, folks. April, go back to skiing, or is it hot tub time? I don't know. What are you going to be doing now?
So I actually, to be honest, I'm all done skiing. My family's going to ski tomorrow, but I'm all done. I'm wimpy.
Okay.
Bad hip, and I'm so sorry, friends. My lighting and my screen is terrible, and it makes you really think about how important lighting and video is when you go into a hotel.
I don't think it bothers anyone. April, thank you so much. I'm going to let you go. We will talk to you in a few minutes. Everybody else, till next week, thank you so much for your support. Thanks for all your input. Start doing your time audit, and we will see you next week for more Webinar Wednesday. Till then,